guys, welcome back. Now, last week I mentioned my next lesson would be focusing on closure, but that's actually still a work in progress. However, in this journey of that next lesson, a few days ago, I had to listen to somebody tell me who I am, what's wrong with me, what's normal, what's not normal, pretty much gaslighting me the whole entire time, which has inspired this lesson. Now, I'm going to admit my tone here is going to be a bit more of a tough love than that gentle care that I gave in my first lesson. And it's because I'm a little frustrated about this. I'll be talking about abuse as well in this one. So if that's a sensitive topic for you, please make sure you have support before continuing to listen. Now, I created Lessons of Charity because I'm not like most people. My thoughts, feelings, and perspective different from the usual norm. I hold high expectations for others, which has its pros and cons. I have a strong sense of justice, integrity, and morals, as well as compassion and empathy. I find it hard to deal with uncertainty, and I have a clear sense of what is right and wrong, yet I'm also very open-minded. People often see me as strong because usually I am. But you know what? Whenever I show sadness or anger, I'm quickly judged. I'm told I'm arrogant or difficult or emotionally unstable. And I hear things like, I can't be the person you want me to be, or not everyone's like you, Charity. Now, I know I'm not perfect, and I don't hide my flaws. I'm okay with admitting my mistakes and saying I'm wrong. And I know I'm not alone in feeling like an outsider to the norm. So this is my opportunity to say, you are not alone. And I understand how hard it can be. But I'm going to take a quote here from Emma Stone as a fellow ENFJer. She says, what sets you apart can sometimes feel like a burden, and it's not. And a lot of times it's what makes you great. Now, I've been proud of who I am most of my life until that situation with my ex. He broke me down for years, along with his little army of flying monkeys. And it was a struggle to get that back, but I thought I did. However, I'm not going to lie, I've been glitching for these last couple of months, and rightfully so, because I'm reliving everything I went through with my ex, which I do not believe is a coincidence. Now, what I mentioned in that first lesson of mine, that I tend to attract men with strong narcissistic or sociopathic traits, is not just due to the fact that I'm empathetic. It's also because they see me as a challenge. They are threatened by an intelligent woman, and they try to use gaslighting to gain control over me. Now, I'm always honest with people that I date. I do struggle to set boundaries. I won't deny that, but I do clearly state my rules and the consequences if they are broken. I have one major rule. Do not lie to me. And I'll explain, if you do, how I'm going to react and what you can expect in return. But the problem is that when I tell this to a narcissist or a sociopath, they use it as a weapon against me. They act, oh, so shocked when I actually follow through and then attack me, calling me I'm crazy or saying I'm unstable. Now, what they don't get, though, is that their actions end up hurting only them in the end, because it's going to make me a lot wiser. After dealing with those tough emotions and getting myself back on my feet, I need to have closure. And I start thinking things through. I look into psychology, spirituality, and the law. I need to make sense of it all. What happened? Now, take my ex, for instance, right? Now, he made me doubt my instincts and what I knew about human behavior. He claimed because I didn't have a PhD, my opinions didn't count, and I didn't know what I was talking about was a line that he often said to me. And for a long time, I thought I didn't, until I was able to get the answers that I needed. Now, this is what gaslighting somebody does. It really breaks down their self-worth and their sense of reality. Now, before finding out about human design, I did feel like there was something wrong with me. I wondered, like, why doesn't my brain work like most people? Like, I really envied those that could let things go easily. I blamed myself, and I went into this kind of like victim blaming spiral and just isolated myself, because being real and honest matters a lot to me. I thought maybe I'm neurodivergent, or maybe I am crazy. Maybe I am borderline. I wasn't sure. So I decided I'm going to get a psychological evaluation and a cognitive ability test done. I wanted to know what was wrong with me so I could fix it. Now, I've had evaluations done before, which I'll talk about in later lessons, and I have been diagnosed with attention deficit disorder, but I knew that wasn't the issue at hand. I mean, honestly, doesn't it seem like everyone kind of has some form of ADD these days? When I got back my results from my evaluation, I was actually surprised, not on the psychological side, but the cognitive side. I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder and a mild form of depression due to complex trauma. This diagnosis is quite common, especially for those who've endured long-term emotional and psychological abuse. It's often a side effect of it. But like I said, what caught me off guard was the fact that my brain wasn't broken. It turns out that there was nothing wrong with it. I actually have a unique set of cognitive skills. First of all, I have superior memory. Now, this explains why I remember things so well, even if others try to say that I'm not remembering it right. Also in the top 2% for something called executive function. Now, this is the cognitive skills that help us manage other skills and actions like figuring things out, solving problems, and making plans. Also, during this time, I took an IQ test and I actually scored 121, which puts me in the gifted category. Now, this was actually a huge shock to me because it's not like I was a straight A student. In college, like one semester, I'd be on academic probation and the next I'd be on the D's list. Now, this turns out it's because of that quad left that I mentioned in human design. Quad lefts are very good at learning and they can learn anything and remember anything, but they have to be into it. They have to want to learn it. And that's why I would ace my classes in my major, but I didn't do so great in the electives. However, my cognitive intelligence doesn't fully account for my personal characteristics. It does allow for that rapid learning and comprehension of complex ideas and problem solving, but there actually isn't a direct link between cognitive intelligence and moral reasoning or empathy. Some studies even suggest that individuals with high IQs may experience challenges in social situations or emotional understanding. So I often ask, like, why am I the outlier? Why? And I have asked my therapist too, like, why am I the exact opposite? Aren't I, like, with my history of abuse, aren't I supposed to be a little jaded? Like, how am I still able to have so much hope and empathy? Let's talk about personality. Like I mentioned in my first lesson, I am an ENFJ, which is about 2% of the population. And you can think about it this way. If the population was $8, I am 16 cents of it. Now, the term ENFJ is one of the 16 personality types from the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. It is a tool designed to help people understand themselves and others better. People with this personality are often called the protagonist or the teacher. Some famous ENFJs other than Emma Stone includes Obama, Oprah, Bono from U2, Reese Witherspoon, and Martin Luther King Jr., just to name a few. ENFJs do well as leaders, which is why you're going to often find politicians and coaches among us. We're also great at understanding people. We are the ultimate people readers, making careers in psychology and social work one of the top recommendations. ENFJs often feel destined for something great and have this strong connection to spirituality or some kind of religious belief. ENFJs are outspoken about our values and we speak up against injustice. We stick to our word. We'll talk the talk and walk the walk, and we do expect others to do the same. Being authentic really matters to us, and it's hard to comprehend when someone isn't. And that's the heart of who I truly am, is this concept of truth and justice. Every personality test I've ever taken says so. I'm also an 8 on the Enneagram. But this is where figuring out what's right and wrong is tough. Now, for us ENFJs, it's about intention and trying to understand the situation deeply. We're always alert, trying to grasp the issue, sticking to our beliefs, and seeking common ground with others. We look for universal truths by checking patterns, consistency, and aiming for the best outcome. The challenge is, though, is when we get caught up in those absolute truths rather than universal ones. But if we are firm in what we think, it's because it's being guided by this high morale and probably through love. And we can't compromise on that. And the secret strength of an ENFJ is our genuine desire to do what is right. Even if our approach isn't what society considers normal, we believe it's the best as long as our intentions are pure and loving. It's like that parent when they say, well, we know what's best for you, even if you don't agree. Yes, an ENFJ may seem manipulative or controlling at times. And I'll admit, I can be like that too. But I guess I think about it this way. Your hands get dirty when you're trying to clean up a mess. I get that this might seem like this is justifying our actions, and it could probably lead to some debates on how far one should go if they believe what is right. And it could make us sound like vigilantes. But then again, we're not called the protagonist for nothing. Now, a true ENFJ's greatest strength is their compassion and empathy. We don't want to hurt anyone because ENFJs feel compelled to fix every injustice they see. They're driven to do the right thing even when most people would never bother. This is a lead by example because we're doing it because we want to hope to inspire others to do the same. Because that's what makes an ENFJ truly happy. It's helping others become the best versions of themselves, even if it means we have to face hardship to do so. Now, ENFJs can pretty much see the potential in any situation and approach things with empathy. Their ability to find hope is one of their secret weapons, and it's a key trait of a line 6 in human design as well, which is me. When things go wrong, an ENFJ needs to understand why. We care so much about fairness and morality. We aim for harmony, truth, and justice. If we mess up, we need to know what we did so we can learn from it. Because it's not just about helping others, it's also about helping ourselves grow into the best versions we can be too. And I can't say enough how this trait is both good and bad. I'm always looking out for hope. I've always looked to hope, even in my darkest times. And nobody could take that away from me, except for my ex. He knew how important hope was to me. I did ask him once, like, why did you do what you did to me? Like, why did you hurt me so bad? And he said, it was because I wanted to take your hope away. And he did for a very long time. But it was unconditional love that brought me back. If there is one thing that can teach you about hope, it is dogs. And my dogs saved my life. And I believe that they were meant to. People who know me know that my dogs are like my children, and I treat them that way. But this shows the other side of an ENFJ. We value loyalty and commitment. Now, for an ENFJ, relationships are a big deal. We do not take them lightly. If you meet an FJ, I would say it's kind of like winning the relationship lottery. So when I hear most people act a certain way, most people ghost, most people don't give closure, most people change their minds, most people just move on and get over it. Well, if an ENFJ did what most people did, who would be left to show how rewarding love can truly be? Because just because most people do something doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. For example, as I mentioned in the first lesson, 75% of young kids experience neglect and abuse. Does that make it okay? Does that mean that most people should abuse their children? Or think about history. Like, most Germans supported Hitler after 1933. Was that the right thing to do? A lot of people backed the Crusades, which led to countless deaths. Does that make it justified for what happened? No. We do need people that aren't like the majority, because those are the ones who are going to stand up and push for change. Besides, what even determines most people? Does that mean that, like, is it like the majority? Does it have to be 90%, 80%, more than half? I don't know. If so, I'm letting you know, in relationships, it's actually not most people. It's half of people. Half of people are in secure relationships and half of people are insecure. Half of people receive closure. Half of people don't. Closure in relationships, though, is healthy, because that 50% that's secure is going to give that. It fosters emotional well-being, which strengthens secure attachments. And this division only strengthens my point in my first lesson. As I said, if you look at society today, we are about split, divided right down the middle. But speaking of today's world, where it's hard to find that emotional connection, security, honesty, and authenticity, ENFJs are the ones that are going to stand out. And that's why you're not going to usually find them dating a lot of people. Most ENFJs are not serial daters. We don't date just to date. We're looking for real potential and long-term connections. We're selective about who we let into our lives. And some say it's like ENFJs search for their soulmate, and that's actually tied to a line 6 in human design as well. And I guess I could say, like, I used to believe in the one, but my thinking has changed on this a lot. I think now more so like there's ones. Each person that comes into your life kind of has a purpose. I do believe like one is meant to stay, but others are part of this journey of stepping stones. Now, it's also rare for an ENFJ to end a relationship. There has to be a really strong reason why. If there's a chance to fix things or grow from a challenge, we're going to tackle it head on. And this is because ENFJs are the most emotionally intelligent of all personality types. Because we understand that relationships take work, but we also know the joy of love. We are always checking in with our partners, eager to discuss how you feeling today and ensure everything is okay. Now, because we enjoy deep talks about life, philosophy, psychology, and we want to make the world a better place. Now, these talks are essential for an ENFJ because it helps us see if someone shares our same values when we're dating. We pay attention to every word you say and what you don't say as well. If you can convince us that you're being truthful, then you'll get us to care. Because we're not really bothered about your flaws or your past. It's about how you present yourself in the present and who you really are. What is your truth? And that's why ENFJs rarely fall for love at first sight. It does take us time to decide if you're worth the effort. But once we do, you and your happiness will become our new purpose in life. However, if you are chosen by an ENFJ, you must keep your promises and stay true to who you are. Because being with an ENFJ may come off as like, ooh, I got a little people pleaser and a doormat, and I'm just going to sit back and relax. Yeah, it doesn't really work that way. It's not a walk in the park with us. An ENFJ needs to know that they're being appreciative and seen. We want to know that our efforts aren't being overlooked or that we're not being taken for granted. While we might seem like a pushover or maybe even dependent, we will pull away if treated poorly or betrayed. There is no use lying to an ENFJ. We will always find out the truth. And we expect those we choose to reach their full potential. If we see something in you, we know you can do it, so you better get there. We set high standards and fight hard to see that they are met. ENFJs are also said to be the only type that can actually get someone to change. It is because we are so persuasive and very skilled at debating. Our arguments are usually in logic and understanding mixed with this hope and love, and it turns those debates into inspiration. So if you ever decide that you want to challenge an ENFJ, you better come prepared. Now, we might be idealistic and sometimes cross lines that others don't agree with, but again, understand it's all for a greater cause. If change doesn't come despite our very, very hard work, eventually an ENFJ will stop. But at this point, they're going to emotionally disconnect, and then they're going to wait for justice that does always seem to come. And when the person returns, because they eventually will, to want to make things right, or because they're feeling some kind of guilt, or maybe they don't want their karma or justice to follow through, an ENFJ will always hear them out, but it's too far at that point for reconciliation. And remember, like I mentioned in my first lesson though, not everybody fits into this personality type exactly. The 16 personalities have only 4 components. So I lean more towards that justice and with that sense of purpose, which could be because of maybe my line 6 in human design, right? So if you are a 1-4, a 2-5, a 3-6 like me, a 4-1, a 5-2, or a 6-3 in human design, plus an ENFJ, your sense of purpose is going to be stronger. Because these are called transitional profiles. It is 6 out of the 12 profiles. These are rare types, and they have these unique traits and purposes compared to the other 6 main profiles. People with transitional profiles have a unique way of interacting with the world. It's more limited because we understand our goals and our choices in a very unique way. Human design kind of implies that these profiles are kind of meant to be part of some big cosmic design, and we play these important roles in life, kind of bridging different human experiences and helping us all to grow in these special ways. Now, this purpose that I'm referring to it kind of involves what I call underneath the chart. This is more of an advanced level of human design, but you can also find clues in your incarnation cross or specific gates or channels. And this is how it adds another layer to who I am, right? So my chart is dominated by gate 18, which is the gate of correction. And this means that I can see what's wrong in any situation and I know how to fix it. But it's meant to be on the collective level. And I will admit that this is often expressed on a one-to-one. This is a challenge for me to not want to reel it in when I see something wrong. Plus, as I mentioned in my first video, I am dominant in the 8th house and a Scorpio rising. The words for a Scorpio is I transform, because it is all Scorpios in the 8th house is all about transformation. It brings forth change because I can see the darker parts of humanity, and then I possess those skills to want to bring them to the light side. Then, of course, I have that Gemini moon, which is the one that gives you the ENFJ voice and the cognitive skills to back up my fight. Then, of course, my main is that Leo that instills that commitment and loyalty. But never forget, a lioness is the one that hunts, not the males. And with all that being said, I get why narcissists and sociopaths are drawn to me. I'm an easy mark, and this is where I struggle. I don't like thinking that people can't change. But you guys, every time I believe this, it seems like someone has to go and prove me wrong. In my first lesson, I talk about signs of high negative sociopathic or narcissistic traits in somebody. I do think most people can change, but guess what? There's still narcissists and full-blown sociopaths out there, okay? Narcissists are definitely tough to handle, and they can definitely be dangerous and abusive. But a true sociopath is even worse. And I cannot stress this enough. You need to understand about 1 in 25 people are sociopaths. That means that there's more sociopaths than ENFJs in the world. Now, these people lack a moral conscience. They're smart and they know what they do is wrong, but they just simply don't care. And they go after challenging targets because they want to feel in control and on top. You must have something they want to break down because they don't see you as a person. They see you as prey. They don't care if you love or want to help them. They don't feel sorry or understand other people's feelings. Kindness doesn't work on them, no matter how much you try to show them it. If you fight back, they're going to try to crush you with every single time. And because they will see any resistance as a threat because they do not fear the consequences. I will expand more on this in the next lesson because there's kind of this experiment that I'm working out with this on right now. But if you want to understand this better before then, I would recommend the book, The Sociopath Next Door by Martha Stout. I said prior in my first lesson that I started studying psychology to understand why people hurt others. So in order to do that, though, we need to understand what really does shape a person's personality. And there is no clear definition at this time. I mean, is it our nature or how we are raised? Is there a soul that defines us? I mean, we do know that our upbringing affects our darker side and our negative beliefs is kind of what shapes that shadow side of us, but it doesn't really touch on the spiritual or political views or that good side of us. Nature definitely has a role, but again, it's not all of it. Now, we are born with certain traits, right? Like my sense of justice was definitely something that was ingrained for me as a baby. Like it showed up when I was a toddler, as you guys heard about, if you listened to the first lesson about me reporting my father when I was age 3. And this actually was along with my spiritual beliefs too. They were chosen at a very, very young age. I wasn't influenced by my parents with it, and it could be our ancestry. I do come from a long line of strong women. My 10th great grandmother was hung as a witch. So maybe that is part of it. But I did recently read a book called The Children Who Remember Past Lives by Ian Stevenson. Now, this is based on research from the University of Virginia and peripheral studies on reincarnation. Stevenson suggests that if reincarnation is real, past lives may be that key part that we're missing of what shapes our personality. Now, some kids in these studies talked about past lives that did really exist. They were able to prove that. But guess what? There was often birthmarks or birth defects that also linked to those past lives, meaning like if somebody was shot somewhere, there'd be like a mark where they were born in this life, right? Whatever shapes our personality, this is who I am. And no matter what, when it does come to wanting to stop others from hurting people, I do try to make sure that it's always coming from a place of integrity. I don't want my actions to be driven by my trauma. I admit I do make mistakes, but I can step back and ask myself, okay, am I seeking revenge or retribution right now? Because there is a big difference. Revenge is spiteful and irrational, while a retribution comes from a more logical and fair place. Now, how do I determine that, right? Like, it's just me. I have to trust my own judgment. Well, you may have heard the term poetic justice. It's used in literature with this kind of outcome where the vice is punished and the virtue is rewarded, usually in some kind of ironic or peculiar manner. And this is the concept kind of behind karma, right? The way I process and determine things is what I like to call noetic justice instead. Now, noetic means this inner wisdom, a kind of implicit understanding or claircognizance, usually through intellect. So when I approach my situations of injustice, I weigh circumstantial and factual evidence. If our past lives do shape our current life, I'll tell you right now, I'm pretty sure I was a lawyer and judge in some past life because I have a knack for this. Because I gather evidence through whatever investigated channels I have without breaking any laws. I'm not tapping people's phones here. And then I'll look to the stars for clarification. And then I present all the stuff I have as if I was in a court of law. Like, do I have enough circumstantial evidence to provide a verdict beyond reasonable doubt if this was presented to a jury of my peers? Now, this is why I take my belief in astrology and human design actually seriously, because I have gathered enough evidence to showcase its legitimacy for myself. And one day I do hope to do the same for the public. We still don't fully understand personality or why people have a dark side, and we haven't found a way to fix it either. But I keep trying to learn more every time I deal with someone that shows these traits. It's kind of that part of my quest for knowledge. So when I'm dealing with a true narcissist or sociopath, I know it's risky and is a bit playing like with fire. I do not suggest doing it. I do what I must to set things right, and then I kind of let the universe handle the rest, and it always does. I believe in fate. And the more I explore this concept, I'm starting to believe that free will is an illusion. Now, calm down. For all you free willers out there, just hear me out. I believe we do have choice, but we can't prevent what is meant to take place. Like what we choose in that moment may alter the path, but fate doesn't stop working in the back end. It just works harder to get you there, meaning you can choose whichever way you want, and you have free will to go one path or the other, but there's usually an easy way or a hard way. And I believe that hard way is that shaped around that karmatic concept. So if you're in a shadow state and you are meant to change for some greater purpose, I believe the universe is going to try to get you to do it in a more loving way first. It's going to tell you, hey, let's take this path. And they'll maybe do it by bringing somebody into your life that can help get you there. But if you don't, and you refuse to stay stuck, well, then it's going to find another way and most likely will cost you a lot more in the end. Now, of course, this is just a theory. I can't say for certain that it's true, but I have seen evidence for this time and time again. But if I am dealing with someone that I feel is capable of change, I'm going to approach the situation with love and compassion first, always. So far, my experiment with this has been proven unsuccessful. Now, I want to reiterate, this is how I handle things. I am not encouraging anyone to do what I do. However, if you are someone like me that just can't let it go, you can at least be prepared. because knowledge is truly your greatest weapon. And I believe the universe has my back on this one too. Because I've heard the word slander and defamation thrown around quite a bit in the last couple of weeks. Please understand, I used to work in media for over 15 years. I am aware of laws, and not to mention, I believe in journalistic integrity. I think that the rise of disinformation and misinformation is one of the most dangerous things this world is facing, and I will not be one of those people that add to that. Now, in the simplest term, slander defamation is making untrue statements about somebody as fact that can possibly ruin their reputation. Slander is done orally, and defamation is done in print or in some permanent format. And you can be civilly sued for this, and it will cost you dearly if you do. Now, this is reflected in the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard case because she made those public statements that he was abusive and it was a lie, and that was proven in a court of law. However, if you are saying the truth and you have evidence to back that up, that can actually backlash for the other person, because guess what? People with cluster B personality traits, aka narcissistic, sociopathic, or borderline, are going to spread lies about you to make themselves look better. It's like it's a compulsive thing. They can't help it. And a clear example of this is how Trump has to pay E. Carroll $83.3 billion in damages for rape and defamation against her character. This is why when I don't know the truth, what the truth is for sure, I will do my own investigation to find out before I make any assumptions. I do not like making assumptions. And I will always go to the source first. And usually I do get what I need from them, but I couldn't with my ex. And so I had to go about it in a different way. And now I can't seem to do it with A either. Now I do understand in my first lesson, I said that story had ended, right? But remember what I said about fate? Now I'm going to have to ask you to trust me on this one. And I'm not going to divulge this story just yet because that's going to be in the next lesson. But in my pursuit of truth, the conversation I was referring to at the very beginning of this lesson was with A's best friend. Now you guys are going to very rarely ever hear me say this, but every now and then I come across people that whatever higher power there may be just sounds this alarm. I, like I said, look for the potential in everyone in every situation, but sometimes all that comes back is an empty void. Now, I did kind of feel it when I met him in person, but I was with A at the time, and my focus was more on him than his friend. But at least I know that my radar still kind of works on an obvious level. And to be honest, I'm a little concerned about this man's girlfriend because he did tell me that she has mental problems, and the universe has already tested him, and obviously he's learned nothing. He is a projector though, so that's not too surprising. That's actually the reason why I went to him. But once projectors become the not self, they can cross this threshold where nothing is going to get them back to that true self. It still hurts them in the end because a projector's biggest issue is when they're out of alignment, it hurts their physical health. Like a classic example of this is Charles Manson, who died of colon cancer. And this is a bit concerning to me because if this is A's best friend and I was to just base my evaluation of A solely on the concept of birds of a feather flock together, like this would be case closed, but I don't. Friend sat there threatening me with slander and defamation and then proceeds to tell me that I'm crazy. Because you know what? I showed up at A's place demanding from the lobby that I come down and he come down and talk to me, and that I was threatening him if he didn't. And when he started talking about it, I just started laughing. I'm like, yeah, that's not what happened. And so you guys, I already shared that story in the first lesson, so I'm not going to bother repeating it. But you know what? If A told him that, that's a blatant lie. And that is slander because I have proof on what actually happened. But of course, that fell on deaf ears. Then he proceeds to imply that I was weak, making comments like, oh my God, look at how much A has control over you. It's just so sad. And when I rebutted, I said, yeah, this has nothing to do about control. I'm just trying to stand by my word, and I expect him to do the same. And he stated, well, oh, so it's just because you can't handle rejection? Yeah, that's your true problem. You can't handle rejection. And I'm like, really? Like, I don't look at this as rejection. I look at this as manipulation. And he insisted that, nope, you've been rejected. And I said, okay, fine, sure, whatever. I don't care. And then he proceeded to tell me that my next relationship was going to be just like A's and the same, because that's how people are. Most people do what A does. Well, when that didn't deter me or break me down, he then telling me how I'm threatening him and who would want to be with someone like that. He started then implying that I'm a violent person, implying that A should get a restraining order against me. He literally said to me, I need you to give me your word that you're not going to inflict physical harm on my friend. Said, I am not justifying that with an answer. That is hands down the stupidest statement anyone has ever said to me. And his response was, well, I'm going to believe my friend over you, implying that A has stated that I'm a violent person and I'm trying to physically hurt him. Okay, now this is where men underestimate my intelligence. I mean, he wasn't even subtle about his gaslighting. I mean, but what he did in return set his best friend up to possibly be sued. Nice job, buddy. First of all, getting a restraining order against somebody is a big freaking deal. Like, you can't just go down to the courts and say, I'd like one restraining order, please. Like, you have to actually show that your life is being threatened and that you're being put in harm and the person is invading your personal space. I went to his place one time. I have not been since, nor have I shown up anywhere else, even by accident. Now, I actually have reasons to go to A's workplace, but I purposely found an alternative solution for that, just to avoid it. And not to mention, I'm sorry, but the hypocrisy behind his friend's justification. You're stating that I'm so crazy because my intention at the time was to do the right thing. But let's just take that off the table, right? Should A's ex gotten a restraining order against him when he flew across the country, showed up at her door without her knowing after they were already done and she was seeing somebody else? But I'm the crazy one for driving 25 minutes to avoid a fight. This is what I mean about, like, if you're going to debate with me or you're going to accuse me of something, at least come at me with something logical, because when you're being so irrational, whatever you're trying to accomplish isn't going to be effective. Because one benefit to A refusing to meet me in person or talk to me on the phone is that everything is documented. When you only want to talk via text or email, guess what? Now I have written proof and it came from you. Not to mention that there is a moral implication behind all of this in more ways than one, which I will touch in on in the next video. But the difference between A and my ex is that A knows my past, and I have a record of that as well. And almost everything he's done up to this point has been the same. So that makes him more liable and more responsible, which brings me to my second point. What most people do not know is that emotional abuse is actually illegal in some states. There can be civil repercussions that can be taken. It simply comes down to how the state defines domestic abuse in terms of a relationship. Now, some states require that the couple to be married. Some states require cohabitation, but some only require proof of an intimate relationship, and that includes the state of Colorado. So if you're having sex with somebody, that's definitely included in that. So if you're in a situation where you're being emotionally abused and you think because your partner is refusing to call it a relationship that you can't do anything about it, guess what? Even a situationship falls underneath that category for a lot of states. Now, what you can sue for is harm to one's health if you can prove a pattern of emotional abuse. And that includes gaslighting, because research has exploded around this in the last year, and repeated studies have shown how damaging it can be to one's mental health. Now, if a narcissist says back to you, or a sociopath, oh no, you're the abusive one, look at what you've done. Look at how you reacted. Guess what? You actually have more proof, because anybody well-versed in clinical psychology is going to recognize this pattern of abuse. Now, I'm not suggesting to take this route, nor do I plan on taking it, right? I'm just saying that you have options. So just keep in mind that it's important to keep all your messages saved, keep all the evidence you have. And you know what? What happens too in court of law is that most people call character witnesses. So if a person has not just done it to you, but somebody else, that also establishes a pattern of abuse. But keep in mind, like, as more and more studies and research comes out, more and more states are recognizing the side effects of emotional abuse, and they are including it in criminal law as well. So I'm telling you right now, if you are somebody that is emotionally abusive and you think, well, I'm not that bad, I'm just on that lower end of the spectrum, I suggest you get help, because you need to stop it. Just because you're not doing physical harm doesn't mean you're not causing harm. I can defend my actions and logic, but a sociopath or narcissist cannot. So they will retaliate by making you doubt yourself. But like I said, there is an intention behind every single thing I do. It may look as a threat to them, but I guarantee you it's not. Now, I understand that this lesson is a little cryptic, right? Because I haven't really divulged what I'm referring to, and many may not understand what the hell I'm even doing, right? That's okay. You don't need to. I promise I will make it clear eventually. This point of this lesson, though, is to simply showcase who I am, and for those who are like me, to provide them with a little bit of extra knowledge. So I'm being transparent because I want to inspire others not to do things because most people would do it. I want you to do it because it's the right thing. Now, as I close this one out, I do have to go on my soapbox for just a little bit. Now, I have a degree in consumer science, which is the study of consumerism in the simplest of terms. I'm a big person on consumer rights, not to be surprised. And I have gone up against quite a few companies in court and out of court when they haven't delivered on what was promised. And I've won every single one without a lawyer. And I say to them, just like anybody I date, right? Like anybody who's repping that company, I'm going to say to you, listen, I'm not your typical consumer. I know my rights. So can we please like skip this song and dance of you gaslighting me to think that I don't have a leg to stand on? Because if we have to dance, it's going to end up costing you more at the end. And I just really don't want to waste my time, because most people don't pursue action because they don't really think the big corporate people are going to win no matter what. I do not like corporate greed. And it's not surprising that the #1 career for a sociopath isn't a CEO. Now, I believe, just like people, brands should also have integrity, because when you're marketing a product, you're making an impact. It can create a whole culture around a product, right? And so what you put out will shape how people view what is normal. Now, this past Valentine's Day, Sweethearts did situationship conversation hearts. And when I saw that, everything in me just cringed. And this is consumerism making a profit off of a toxic situation. So bad. We have officially branded situationships. A situationship is defined as a romantic relationship that lacks commitment and the associated norms and expectations that a commitment would require. Okay, do you know this is also the definition of a commitment phobia, and similar to how an avoidant is in relationships? Now, this type of relationship is trending. Like, some people really are for it. And this is a favorable type with Gen Zers. I explained that they prefer this like kind of short-term commitment rather than longer. Is this our justification by saying like, this is okay? Is this what we're going to do now? Like, we're going to use 11 to 26-year-olds to define what a relationship should be? Well, let me explain. 90% of relationships don't work out before age 30, and that's not surprising. I mean, you haven't even reached your Saturn return yet. So let's calm it down, people. And who do we decide who gets to define what a relationship is? You know what? I totally understand that right now I'm having that moment when you realize that you've become that person that you've rolled your eyes at in your younger years that said, oh, you know, because you were so sure you had life figured out and someone's telling you what is wrong and what is right until later on in life. And then you figure out how freaking right they were. Yeah, that's the moment I'm having right now. So I feel extremely aged, but I'm telling you, okay, I'm going to make that sacrifice into my own pride and ego by saying that nothing good will come out of a situationship. Please hear me on this. Do you think it's a coincidence that there has been a rise in the attachment theory, narcissism, and emotional abuse? I mean, one study found that all women that participated in a situationship experienced serious emotional harm. This type of relationship encourages mistreatment towards another. It causes confusion and anxiety, and it is the prime foundation of bringing gaslighting and toxic behaviors. It's downplaying human connection, and it fosters emotional ignorance. It goes against our biology. Okay, sex releases oxytocin, which is that love hormone. The more you have sex with someone, one is going to get feelings, if not both, right? So, because belongingness is a human need to survive. Okay. Like, you have to belong to somebody. You have to feel like you belong to somebody. When we fight our basic biological needs, nature finds a way to balance it out with evolution. I don't care if you do not believe in evolution or not. There is significant evidence on this, okay? I don't care if you think that we were created by a higher power or we came from monkeys or whatever. We will evolve. We are supposed to be making the world a better place for future generations, not destroying the chance for us to survive, okay? And if you think that this is all dramatic, let me explain. I'm not really one that believes in prophecies. Like, I mean, they're fun to listen to, but you know, this isn't like back in Babylonian times where something was etched on a stone and oh my God, it was going to come true. But when that prophecy is made and predictions start coming true, one right after another, there might be a little bit of a red flag coming up here, right? Like, there's the warning. Now, I did a presentation on the 2027 prophecy of human design like over a year ago. And most people have changed Ra's original prophecy into something more positive, like claiming like Ra wasn't a prophet and he just had this pessimistic outlook on life. He wasn't seeing the light side of it. But I'm all about the message of hope. Like, yes, what a beautiful way to take something negative and spin it and reframe it into something positive. But that's not really how prophecies work, right? Like I said, like, hope has gotten me through a lot of shit in my life, but you can't turn on the light if you're avoiding the dark. So, and I have read the original prophecy, and you guys, it is not good, okay? One part is how we engage in relationships due to that mutation of gate 49 in the emotional solar plexus. Now, if you want to know more, I'm not going to tell you the full spiel, right? Because I'll provide the link below. But there is a repeated pattern in history that shows that when we are warned about something over and over, and evidence is there to back it up, but we refuse to listen, eventually it leads to something out of our control. Like I said about fate, right? Like I said, we can go about change an easy way, because whatever universal power, there is always going to give us the chance to do the right thing first, right? But when we refuse to change and we refuse to listen, it usually delivers some kind of blow to knock us off our feet and force us what needs to be done. So this is my calling. For those that want to be better and lead by example, it's time to step up. So we can start changing what most people think and bring a better future to all people.